Hi, I'm Grant Stevens.
And I'm Kris Bernier.
And we're the Two Investment Guys. This week, Kris and I want to turn back to the markets, talk about some of the issues there. Rather than going around the world with the state of the indice returns, Kris, I think everybody's pretty much aware that the returns are dismal. I'll single out the Dow as the best performing major market index that we follow. It's up about 2% so far this year, so hardly a reason to head out on the streets and rejoice, Kris. But it is interesting because the last month or so has been very strong for the Dow. It's on track to put in perhaps its strongest month ever in its history. However, and there's been some issues driving that. One is we're early stages Q3 earnings, which aren't bad, and the other is some perception of progress in the Eurozone. Why don't we talk a little bit about this perception of progress in the Eurozone?
Sure. Well, it seems like the politicians have finally started to recognize the seriousness of the problems there. We've seen a summit here that should take place this week. I'm not sure that there's going to be that much concrete come out of that summit, but at least the politicians of all the 17 Euro nations are getting together. They're trying to resolve the issues and come up with a palatable solution to all, which is not an easy task when you look at all the different cultures and so on there. The bondholders of Greek debt looks like they're trying to negotiate a 50, maybe 60% reduction in the principal value of that debt. So that would probably be what we would call, I guess, an organized default. Yeah. We've seen recently the Purchasing Managers Index in Europe fall below 50, which means that technically Europe looks like they have fallen into a recession, although we expect it to be relatively brief. But it all depends on whether the politicians are able to get something done or not.
Yeah. And Kris, we've talked about this Eurozone, the issues, for almost 2 years now. And I would summarize it this way, that the politicians are still smoking in bed while the house is burning down around them. This has been going on, and they're having a very difficult time making any progress on resolutions. Let's turn to the earnings front because that's a little bit better of a story. We're about a third of the way through Q3 earnings. We've seen a 70% upside surprise number, so that means that more companies are surprising on the improved profit side than a negative side. That's better than the 10-year average number on that, Kris, and that's in a very challenging environment. One of the things that we watch is the CEO confidence measure, and it's really just how they're feeling about their business and the economy as a whole. Why don't you touch on that?
Sure. Well, one of the things about earnings, I would say, is that those earnings have been ratcheted down. So they are beating, but those earnings have been ratcheted down. CEOs have been fairly upbeat on the outlook for their businesses going forward, but they've been cautious on their guidance because the economic outlook has been quite murky. We just talked about Europe. China's been slowing. The U.S. has been fairly slow, and we do get a GDP number out of the U.S. Fairly soon, and I think the call is for about 2.5%, although I think we wouldn't be too surprised if it came in lower than that.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Kris. I think there's a lot of developments that continue to unfold, and the GDP is a lagging indicator, so it looks back at what's happened. One of the other things that we're watching for is it's apparent to us at least that the earnings revisions, we're seeing an increased number of negative revisions, which means more and more companies are setting the bar lower and lower. And this goes back to the CEOs having confidence in their company, but not in the economy. So we're going to continue to watch that for you. We could summarize this by saying there are 3 things that need to occur for the market to stabilize and make any meaningful type of rally, and they're really hard things to solve. The first one is, all these Euro questions need to be resolved. Kris, another one is this whole idea around, can the U.S. avoid a recession? And we don't know the answer to that yet. And then there's the third one with China.
China. We need to know where China settles out in terms of their growth rate. It's slowed, certainly. They've been trying to slow the economy there and ease inflationary pressures. And so far, they seem to be doing a pretty good job, but the outcome is still uncertain. So those are the issues that we're watching for you, and we'll keep you updated as we go forward. We want to thank you again for your questions and comments. Please keep them coming. You can contact Grant and I at TwoInvestmentGuys.com.
Join us next time. We should be able to give you a wrap on the earnings season. So until then, I'm Grant.
And I'm Kris.
And we're the Two Investment Guys.